now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. This is going to be a part 2 to my classic video, No Hope, No Change for New York City. Now, in the previous video, I talked about how your Eric Adams became New York's second black mayor and how he pulled a swerve on many Negro voters by going out here and standing at the side of your Bill de Blasio and supporting Bill de Blasio's extremely dysfunctional policies like this jab mandate that keeps many Afro-American Negroes from being able to go into indoor spaces like movie theaters, gyms, and restaurants, and even keeps most Afro-American Negroes out of a job. Now, how does this happen to the Afro-American Negro? That is the critical question I'm going to answer in this video because, sadly, this is the third time this has happened to the New York Negro. Now, the New York Negro fell for the Okie-Doke for the third time with your Eric Adams because the New York Negro is not politically aware. And because he doesn't have a good education in politics, what he does is he goes out here and supports any candidate who is black based on emotions, all because he sees someone with a similar skin tone than his. And when he goes out here and supports these candidates just based on the color of their skin, what happens is he winds up getting taken advantage of by a group of people and a party that does not respect him or respect his vote. Now, these people who are a part of this party, what they do is they go find themselves one of these baby boomer bootlicks to go out here and represent their interests. Now, many of these leftists know that the baby boomers are one of the most useless generations of people, and most of them live for white acceptance and white approval. So what they do is find themselves a nice baby boomer bootlick, dress him up in a nice suit, and then trot him out in front of the Negro and have him use buzzwords that stimulate the Negro's emotions and get him to believe that he is the next big leader that is going to be like your Martin Luther King, and that guy will go out here and represent their interests. But in many cases, this Negro who they trot out in front of you is nothing more than a Trojan horse. This was done to the Negro back in 1989 with David Dinkins here in New York, and it was done back in 2008 with Barack Obama. Both of these Negroes were some of these guys who were a part of the black elite, and what they did was dress him up, put him out there in a nice suit, and then have him tell the black masses what they want to hear. And because most people just see the color of his skin, they never go out here and vet the content of their character. And because they do not vet the content of their character, what they do is get caught up in supporting him because he is quote-unquote black, but all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And that is shown by the actions of these Trojan horse Negroes who come out here and say they want to represent a city as related to politics, but then create policies that are detrimental to black people. Now, what was really troubling about your Eric Adams is that he came out here and he ran this Trojan horse game for the third time. And you would think that many of your Afro-American Negroes would have had some critical thinking after having the swerve pulled on them with Barack Obama back in 2008. You would think that many Negroes out there would quickly be able to identify one of these Afro-American Negro Trojan horses by just listening to their words or watching their actions. Now, the big problem I see, again, with many of the black masses here in New York City is they all got caught up in the buzzword of change. Now, your Bill de Blasio, the previous white beta male mayor, had practically run New York City into the ground. And many of these black voters, they thought, oh, your Eric Adams, a black man, is coming out here talking about change, but they were not thinking critically or looking at his past actions or looking at his background. Because if you look at this man's background, you can see that he's a part of the same party that Bill de Blasio was a part of. And that right there should have been one indicator to tell you that you're not going to get change, because if this man is a part of the same political party as the previous mayor, you're not going to get change. Moreover, your Bill de Blasio is a certified failure, and your Eric Adams was willing to go along with the certified failure, basically because he's one, a baby boomer bootlick who likes butter biscuits, and two, because he sees a white man, and many of your baby boomer butter biscuit bootlicks, they love white people. So they are not looking to go out here and change the policies of a man that they go out here and deify and worship, because even though your Bill de Blasio was a completely incompetent jackass, your Eric Adams is still worshiping at the feet of a Bill de Blasio, because his white skin covers a multitude of sins and imperfections, even though we clearly see that he is a completely incompetent person who practically was running a city straight into the ground. But that didn't matter to a baby boomer butter biscuit bootlick like an Eric Adams, because he is out here worshiping this white man. And that was shown when he pulled the swerve on all New Yorkers by going out here and, one, supporting many of Bill de Blasio's failed policies, two, appointing many of Bill de Blasio's incompetent workers to be a part of his administration, and then three, going out here and celebrating his whole betrayal of New Yorkers by going out here and standing at the side of a white man who practically destroyed an entire city by participating in his New Year's Eve celebration, all while a pandemic of COVID-19 and a surge of COVID-19 was going on. Basically, what your Eric Adams did was celebrate his own joining with Bill de Blasio, and he was really celebrating being accepted by white people, because many of your baby boomer black people, they live for white validation and acceptance, and they will sit there and even take white validation and acceptance from a white man, even though that white man is a failure. And that's the whole sad part about your Eric Adams, this Trojan horse Negro. He went out here and he pulled the swerve on black people, and sadly this happened because many black people did not go out here and watch classic videos by people like the late David Carroll or people like Professor Black Truth, who were out here actively trying to get black people to become aware of how politics is run. Now, the late David Carroll, he tried to warn many of these black people out here that you have to go out here and create your own agenda, because when you create your own agenda, you can go out here and be able to get those tangibles to you. And your Professor Black Truth also tried to tell you that you need to get tangibles in exchange for your vote and not to take your vote for granted. But many black people, they still take their vote for granted because they get caught up in their emotions regarding a candidate, and because they get caught up in their emotions regarding a candidate's skin tone, they don't look at who they are as a person. And because they're caught up in the flash of that candidate's skin tone, they don't look at the substance of their actions or the substance of their policies. Now, your Eric Adams, after getting elected mayor, went on this so-called journey to Africa, and he was trying to, again, make a symbolic gesture of saying how pro-black he was. But when he came back to New York City, he showed us that he was no different than any of these fake pro-blacks who talk about black empowerment, but whenever a white person comes along, they're right there looking to gain favor with that white person. How can you be about black empowerment, but any minute a white person comes along and they're there, you're seeking their approval? That's a critical question I would like to ask Eric Adams after his so-called trip to Ghana. How could you go back from Africa to New York and then stab all of those black people in the back who have been forced to become segregated by these medical Jim Crow policies that keep black people from being able to even work in the city of New York? How can you go back to Africa talking about going back to your roots, and then you're going to go out here and stab many black Americans in the back? That's what shows us again how he's not pro-black, and it shows us that we need to really do some more critical thinking about how we pick our candidates, because we cannot keep accepting candidates that are brought out to us. No, if we want to go out here and ensure that we get real change, we have to be the ones who create the candidates. That's something David Carroll tried to tell us to do before he passed away. He tried to tell us that we need to go out here and create the candidates, and we can only create the candidates after we create the agenda. Because once we create the agenda, we then pick the candidates, and we don't go out here and take one of their trotted out, hand-picked so-called Negroes and go out here and vote for any of them. Because these butter biscuit baby boomer bootlicks, these guys, they're nothing more than hand-picked shills for white supremacy, and all they're out to do is the dirty work of white supremacy. And even though they have black skin, they are nothing more than white supremacists in blackface, and all they want to do is continue enforcing the same policies of white supremacy, like your Eric Adams wants his black female police commissioner to do by bringing back the unconstitutional policy of stop and frisk. Because stop and frisk was meant to go after black New Yorkers, and it was meant to be able to terrorize and scare black New Yorkers, not reduce crime. Because the way we reduced crime was through doing things like making sure that certain quality of life initiatives were dealt with, like certain things like urinating on the street and defecating on the street. People were arrested for this, and dealing with certain drug issues, and also making sure that the DA's office actually processed cases. Because one of the reasons why we had bail reform that failed policy was because district attorneys were not processing cases fast enough, and this is why Khalif Browder wound up languishing in the Rikers Island for 3 years instead of having his case brought in front of a judge for trial in the specified 180 days. That's something many of your politicians never want to talk about. They never wanted to talk about how these DAs never went out here and processed Khalif Browder's case in a speedy manner and violated his constitutional right to a speedy trial. That's something many New York leftist politicians don't want to talk about. No, they want to talk about bail reform, a policy that practically led to a surge in crime as the coronavirus pandemic was going on. They don't want to talk about that because many of your black politicians, like your Jumaane Williams, they were the ones behind that bail reform policy, and that policy, again, detrimental to New Yorkers all across the city, and a policy that practically opened up the floodgates and let many felons come out here to wreak havoc across the city. And that's another thing that, again, what happens when you just keep voting straight down a blue ticket without ever thinking critically about who you are voting for. And that's something many New Yorkers did with your Eric Adams. They voted straight down a blue ticket, hoping to get change from going and doing the exact same thing of supporting a party that has been all about failure for the last couple of years. I mean, your Bill de Blasio is a part of a party that over the last 8 years took New Yorkers for granted and takes black New Yorkers' votes for granted. And many black voters, because all they see is what happened during the baby boomer period with the civil rights movement, does not go out here and think objectively about the current party and how this current party is just filled with a lot of empty suits that are basically a skin color but have absolutely no character whatsoever. And all because they're caught up in their emotions about the Civil Rights Act being signed by Lyndon Johnson, a certified racist. They're sitting there thinking that they can go out here and vote for this party without thinking about agenda or, most importantly, tangibles as related to policy. Because if you are not getting tangibles in exchange for your vote, you are basically wasting your time. And many black voters, they waste their time supporting these Trojan horse Negroes, and these Trojan horse Negroes, they infiltrate the black community by talking about change, making all sorts of rhetorical statements, stimulating your feelings, but never really making you think critically about how they're going to do what they're going to do. And that's why nothing really changes. And that's really why there is no hope of anything changing here in New York City over the next 4 years, because most black voters went out here and were tricked into voting for another one of these baby boomer butter biscuit eating bootlicks who is all about himself, because many of these baby boomers, they have this motto: I got mine, fuck you, and once I get mine, I don't give a fuck about you. Because many of your baby boomers, once they get theirs and they get in their spot with the white folks, what happens is they just don't care about any other black person, and all they're thinking about is protecting their spot, and they could care less about whether you go out here and get some tangibles, because as long as they're getting their crumbs from the master's table, they're all perfectly fine, because these dutiful slaves are out here getting their bowl of cream of wheat. And this cream of wheat man, Eric Adams, now that he's gotten his bowl of cream of wheat, he's out here to just abandon the black community, because like Barack Obama, who came before him talking about change, he went out here, got his, and then went on his way. And again, this is all happens when you have a group of Negroes who are out here who don't really know process, and because they don't know process, they get taken advantage of by these hand-picked butter biscuit bootlick baby boomers who are again brought out here by the white leftists to represent his interest, not yours. And that's the thing that many black people don't understand, is that these people are not about your interest, and because they're not about your interest, that's why there's no hope of anything changing here in New York City for your black voters here in New York City. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find books on Smashwares, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.